Our final collaborator who's co-hosting this session with us today is Intersex Asia. Intersex Asia is an autonomous regional network of intersex-led organizations and individuals from Asian countries that work to support, educate, and advocate for the rights and lives of intersex people and raise awareness on human rights violations and discrimination faced by intersex communities. We are just going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves, because we know how embarrassing it can be when other people read your bios. So maybe we'll have Sabrina start. Sabrina, could you please introduce yourself in just a minute?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being that early in this session. I'm Sabrina Sanchez. I'm the executive director of ESWA, that is the European Center for Political Alliance. I take welcome about myself, and I'm also
Esan, would you like to go next, please?
And the share of that is Asia Cup. Executive director and the internet to that country. We're organized by
Buenos días. Good morning, everyone. Is this working? Okay. And thank you for the organizers for having me. I'm Maria Luisa Peralta. I'm a lesbian activist from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I work with Akahatá, Equipo de Trabajo en Sexualidades y Géneros. We are an organization doing advocacy on sexual rights in the Latin American region, and we are part of the Sexual Rights Initiative, the Observatory for the Universality of Rights, and the Coalition of LGBTI and Sex Workers Organization of the Americas.
I'm Oriana Lopez. I'm a pansexual feminist from Mexico. I am a member of Vecinas Feministas, and I'm a former member of Research, working both organizations working for sexual and reproductive justice.
Great. Thank you so much to our wonderful panel for introducing themselves. We are really, really privileged to have you all with us. Sabrina, I'll put the opening question to you. Could you reflect on how the sex workers' rights movement has seen the impact of criminalization over the last 30 years? How has women's rights movement's reliance on criminalization as a tactic to address violence and harm impacted sex workers? And in your opinion, or from your vantage point, do sex workers see any use for criminalization?
I couldn't. Thank you for the question. Well, unfortunately, the that we are facing now, since 30 years ago, the most known that we have, that is the famous Swedish model, equality model. Now they call it now, end-demand model, a model of prostitution, sex work. It was born in the gym, unfortunately, because it was thought about it and distributed and make it multi-medical, and then implemented in Sweden. One, she was them. That Sweden, with all the work ethic now, by such the dismantle or has everywhere, but that it doesn't have to never The fact that are exporting this policy, and they know that it doesn't work. But sometimes you, as an activist, as a sex worker, as a person that has to navigate those policies in the real life, something that the people that are suggesting them and praising them as the best of the best of the best, they don't. They got this persons when a pandemic arrives, they're happily in their houses and the salary is covered and everything is regulated and with rights. Meanwhile, us, the ones that are the subject of their work in the last term, we were just abandoned. No, so criminalization doesn't help on bringing clarity to what is an exploitative the trafficking situation or modern slavery situation, and what is terrible, awful, bad conditions, but that can be addressed by organizing with a trade in a trade union or pressing more the owner of the means of production to improve their the premises that usually the part of the employees is awful. Meanwhile, what the clients can see is luxury and opulence. Um, Criminalization doesn't work. It's like the prison doesn't work. No, prison has never deterred anybody to committing a crime. They do it. They do it. What we need to think is a different system of accountability, a different system of reparation. For me, is making no sense. That's a guy who spends 3 years in a prison because he groped my ass. Like, yeah, I mean, it was not correct, but I don't want a person to go to the jail and then, all the things that happen in jail for this much, the readaptation doesn't work. So, to answer the last part of the work question is criminalization never works. Doesn't work. Drugs doesn't it doesn't work in sex work. Didn't work in alcohol. Just don't work because in a criminal mindset, criminals flourish. Thanks.
Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you also for reminding us of the role that the Beijing Fourth World Conference on Women played in sort of, I guess, solidifying what we sort of now know as the Swedish model or the Nordic model, or as you referred to it, also the end demand model. And then, I think it was kind of normalized or established in some way as being the dominant kind of paradigm for member states during Beijing, and then was exported by a handful of member states around the world, and continues to be, I think, today the dominant sort of popular way of engaging with sex work in many states. Sabika, do you want to ask the next question? Yes. To Maria Luisa?
Okay. So, Maria, how is the criminalization of surrogacy going to impact people's life? And how are these impacts gendered? How can the reproductive justice movement do more to protect bodily autonomy as a whole, especially right now in the wake of newer attacks on us?
Thank you. I think it's extremely important that we are reflecting on criminalization and where that has led our movements, because feminist and LGBT movements have pushed for tougher laws and for higher sentences, without analyzing, without criticizing that those laws will be implemented by a judiciary system that is intrinsically colonial, patriarchal, racist, and classist. And it's important we do this because when we analyze why the far right is in a rise, there are successes, but also our mistakes. And this is one of the mistakes, because we contributed to build a common sense based on victimhood, and that's very problematic. That allows all sorts of protectionist measures. And also that reinforces incarceration. Then, as Sabrina was saying, criminalization doesn't work for a lot of things. It only works for some centralized things that are in the hands of the state, like, for instance, banning gay marriage, because only the state can allow marriage. But for all the activities that depend on individuals, it's useless to ban them, to try to ban them, to criminalize them, because people will still be doing that. And then the people involved, in this case, the surrogate women and also the egg donors, many people doesn't know that in surrogacy, most of the times nowadays, the eggs come from a third party, not from the surrogate. So these women are forced into hiding. Of course, there are abuses in surrogacy, like there are in many other areas in life, like heterosexual marriage. Most femicide occur within heterosexual relationships. Nobody is trying to ban that. The only things that are attempted to be banned are those that elicit moral panic.
Oriana's trying to ban.
I'm for the abolition of marriage in general. Yeah. but not for heterosexual sexual relationships. They can do it if they want. If they want it, they are fine. So the point is this: the things that elicit moral panics, and we need to unpack that part. The problem is that when people are forced into being clandestine, into hiding, they have less resources to report those abuses. They have much less ways to protect themselves and also to exert their agency, to set their boundaries, to establish conditions. And there's a very important symbolic way in which this impact is gendered, and this is the essentialization of motherhood. We are losing things that we have won. This is a step backwards in relation to we have already won in the fight for abortion. And we need to be consistent. If in the struggle for abortion, we say that being pregnant is not equal with being a mother, the same applies to surrogacy. And saying the contrary reinforces this essentialization of motherhood. One of the problems, this has happened in my country, in Argentina, a couple of months ago, is that in some cases, because there's this narrative of surrogacy being traffic and children selling and all that, the state is trying to force surrogate women to keep those babies they do not consider their children, and they didn't intend to be their children. And they are being forced to keep them. This is very bad for everybody, for the women, for the intended parents, and for the child. This is not a solution. And another problem is that behind this narrative of exploitation, there's the big moral panic of the powerful gays. There's a lot of homophobia in the discourse against surrogacy, and the narrative is these wealthy gays are exploiting impoverished global South women. This reinforces this stereotype and myth of the powerful lobby queer. It used to be the gay queer, the gay lobby. Now is the queer lobby. So we are very powerful. We have lots of money to push for our agenda. I wish we have, but we don't have money nor power. But it's that big myth there. The powerful lobby queer and gender ideology, all that is behind this attempt to ban surrogacy, and that is a gender impact because it has an impact on all our agendas, in all our struggles. And for wrapping up and to say the final, how we can better advocate for bodily autonomy as a whole. First of all, we need to avoid and confront reproductive justice being reduced to abortion. It's much more than abortion, and too many times feminists especially are saying reproductive justice to say abortion without saying abortion. That's problematic. We need to keep the whole broad range of things that are included in reproductive justice, and we need to put our emphasis and our advocacy efforts not in banning, but in regulation, in laws regulating surrogacy in a way that interfere the power dynamics. We need to be talking about power. Pregnancy is a process that takes many months, in the course of which many things can arise. For instance, health issues. So the big question is, who has the power to make decisions during that process? For instance, if some medical condition arises, nothing extraordinary, diabetes, high blood pressure, common things that can happen during a pregnancy, who decides which level of risk is acceptable and which is not? Who decides what that surrogate woman eats, where she lives, where, when, and with whom she goes to medical controls, which is the way of delivering the baby? Who she has sex? Who decides all this? And specifically, this question of who decides the acceptable levels of risk and of many other measures, and who decides if an abortion is needed, and what kind of consequences or reprisals for the surrogate will have making these decisions. So, for the reproductive justice movement, the point should be in reinforcing, in advocating for the agency of the surrogate and the egg donors, and to interfere with that power dynamics. That is the main point. So regulation is important, but in this way, not in the way of banning. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maria Luisa, for, I think, really just kind of beautifully opening up the conversation about bodily autonomy. I know that, in a way, this whole panel is talking about the different peoples and different communities' right to bodily autonomy, and how, in a way, the feminist movement is totally inconsistent at times, as you've said, right, with whether it's sex workers' rights, intersex people's rights, the mutilation of intersex children, for example, is rarely talked about by the kind of mainstream reproductive justice movement or within the ambit of bodily autonomy. And I'm sure that Esan will come to that as well. And Oriana, I know that you will as well. But just to kind of break it up a little bit, we're going to play a short video by an indigenous, queer activist and technologist. They'll introduce themselves in the video. Andrea. Andrea is the founder of an AI-based app called Shore AI, and Andrea will explain how Shore works. And Andrea's intervention is going to try to sort of tease out the tension between hate speech and freedom of expression. And also kind of maybe it gives us a little bit of a sort of conversation starter about non-punitive, non-carceral alternatives that are built by feminists to tackle harm that's gendered, harm that's targeting marginalized folks in a way that is not relying on the state or kind of carceral logics. So we'll listen to them now.
Just before we go ahead, throughout the session, in case you have any questions, please let us know. We'll be accepting written questions. So I have a few postcards here, and I will just leave it on the end of every row, and you could just write your questions down and pass it forward to us. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Adria Barua, the founder of Shore AI, a project born from my lived experience of online violence as a queer, indigenous, disabled political artist. Shore AI is a UNFPA award winning AI solution that tackles online hate speech and doxing against marginalized communities in the Indian context. Today, I want to talk about how we can address hate speech while protecting freedom of expression and why feminist and queer-led tech like Shore AI offers an alternative to current state and corporate criminalization. Online hate disproportionately affects marginalized communities. In India, 74% of people report facing online violence, and the number increases to 40% when it comes to queer people in India. The way hate speech is currently addressed through state surveillance, internet shutdowns, content takedowns, or criminalization often harms the very people it claims to protect. Sharia isn't just another moderation tool. It's built by and for the people directly impacted. Our data set was crowdsourced from marginalized communities, ensuring that the model understands context, intersectionality, and linguistic diversity in the Indian languages. A volunteer group of marginalized folks manually tag and analyze over 50,000 comments, classify hate speech into 8 categories based on the target groups. The 8 categories that we saw were queerphobia, gendered hate, communal hate, political hate against activists and journalists, asketism, ableism, racism, xenophobia, and gender violence. Our analysis showed that 40% of the victims that meet collected word was sexual and gender minorities, 90% was queerphobic, and he also saw that in India, between political and government case, there was a major intersection from people percent. This shows that these days we lot just no, it is not uh, in silos. It is basically like super interconnected and intersectional. Instead of policing speech, we focus on community driven accountability. We push for community based leaders also, which is why short AI AU integrated as a third party content model API that can be integrated into the different platforms, allowing the corticate informed context aware action. Furthermore, we realized that just creating a moderation tool wasn't enough. We also have to build spaces such that the marginalized folks can reclaim their online spaces, which is why we built a short grassroots innovators community. It is a support group for marginalized folks not to just talk about the problems they're facing, but also come together in building solutions against THGBT. We share resources, mentorship, funding opportunities so that more people from our communities can build their own feminist and queer tech solutions. Shore Mag, Tech from Margins, is our publication platform where marginalized communities can tell their own stories, push back against online violence, and shape digital culture through art and writing. Through these initiatives, we try to use art to make tech more accessible to the masses. The future of moderation must be shaped by those who are affected by them, by online harms.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina and Ishan. Are you with us? Okay, great. I'm gonna go to Ishan next. So I think my question for you, Ishan, can you reflect on how the intersex rights movement has relied on legal protections and also sought alternatives in some cases to bans and prohibitions to ensure rights? have bans and prohibitions worked? We know that, of course, in some cases, outright bans and prohibitions on forced intersex surgery on children, for example, is an advocacy strategy that the intersex rights movement has sought. Have these strategies worked? What are the limitations, or what are the benefits, both pros and cons of such remedies?
Thank you, Chuman, for the quick and also Kate like to GLE and all the co-organizer of platform next few year. Additional to your question directly, I would say that the intersex rights movement globally employ the multifaceted approach to advocate for the intersex right, utilizing both legal protection, including measure that can be considered as a form of criminalization, and study pursuing alternative approach. This approach addresses the historical and ongoing human rights violations experienced by intersex people, particularly non-consensual medical intervention conformed to the align their body with binary sex norms. A central demand of the global intersex human rights intersex community, as noted in Malta Declaration as well as other regional statements, is for legal provision against non-consensual medical intervention on intersex minor. These interventions often from so-called sex normalizing treatments and violate intersex individual right to bodily integrity, autonomy, and self-determination. The movement has actively advocated for national legislation that explicitly bans these harmful um, practice without the free, prior, and fully informed consent of the individual. To date, 6 UN member states, Germany, Greek, Iceland, Malta, Portugal, and Spain, have in weight variant degree of prohibitions. Some of the top include panel provisions. Closer to home in Asia, we didn't have many good example except for the guidelines brought by the Taiwan government to discourse surgery and the state level educative regulation in the Indian state of Tamil Nadu. In my home country in Nepal, there is currently no legal framework to prohibit such surgery, despite numerous recommendation from UN treaty body like CIC, CEDAW. Um, However, some legal document had included intersex issues like National Child Rights Policy 2080 and the Child Protection and Child Rights Directive 2080 from the Kathmandu Metropolitan City have made progressing steps regarding intersex issues, specifically intersex child issues. In each of these legislative and executive measure I have described, the primary purpose had been to discourage unnecessary surgery rather than actively working criminalization of medical professionals. The intersex rights movement recognized that legal ban and permissions alone are insufficient to guarantee the well-being and right of intersex individual. The measure must be complemented by broader range of strategies that address the root cause of discriminations. One the key alternative focus is the development of intersex affirming protocols and standard of care within the medical field. Activists emphasize healthcare that prioritize individual autonomy and well-being, advocate for multidisciplinary support and psychological psychosocial environments that are from intersex identities. And we believe that medical professional can be key ally in this journey, as we have seen from the experiences of our friends in intersex Greeks who have managed to pass a really good law with the cooperation of medical professionals. In several other countries, we have seen how these collaborations can result in positive outcome. In our opinion, the needs for criminalization become less important if there are medical protocol based on human rights principle and developed in close consultation with intersex organization, intersex lead organization and intersex individual. Such an approach can help to shift the focus of the medical communities towards respect bodily diversity without solely relying on criminal actions. Beyond the medical sphere, the movement places significant emphasis on raising awareness and combating stigma and discrimination through education and public outreach. We fully understand that legal protection are most effective when coupled with societal understanding and acceptance. Close to New York, where event is happening, a Shida was in 2020. Please do stop performing medical unnecessary surgery on the children on with intersex traits. Clearly, public information campaigns as seen in Chicago and New York City example exemplify effort to counter misinformation and provide accurate information to medical professionals and parents without necessary involving criminal penalties for the lack of awareness. In my view, while we have seen a few successes, there is still a long path ahead of us, given the tourism's lack of legal protection, even in countries with provisions challenges persist in the implementation, enforcement, and addressing the loopholes. This fact further demonstrate that fact that provisions are not effective. In conclusion, I would say that the intersex rights movement strategically utilize legal protection, including penance, anti-discriminations, law, and critical tools. However, its strength lies in the parallel pursuit of alternatives such as intersex affirming medical protocol and awareness campaign, psychological, psychosocial support, and data collection. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ishan. You're getting a big round of applause here. I don't know if you can hear that, but you just got a big clap. Because I think, Ishan, your intervention just really, I think, speaks to this kind of really holistic, multifaceted, multi-pronged approach that is needed, right? So you're saying, yes, we often advocated for the protections, for bans, for prohibitions, but nothing without looking at the sort of social root causes of discrimination, doing advocacy that affirms the rights of intersex people in the medical profession, rights affirming medical protocols, bringing medical professionals on board as allies, educating them. So I think this is just such a great example of a movement that is really looking at such a wide range of strategies that are trying to come at this problem through the social angle, the psychosocial angle, the medical angle, as well as seeking legal protections. Sabika, would you like to ask our question?
I think this question is for Oriana. If you could share with us the origin of Injusta Justicia campaign and how has criminalization been helpful or not in the social and in the sexual and reproductive rights of adolescents?
Thank you. So the Injusta Justicia campaign, just for you to know that what it is about, it's exploring different cases of how the justice system has failed them. I have been them to do certain things. So we have different cases. If you want to go to the website, it's injustajusticia.org. And it's exploring it in Latin America, and it's a collaboration between Vecinas, Feministas, and Balance, which is a feminist organization based in Mexico. And I think that the origin was exactly this, like exploring how are the different ways that we are criminalizing sexual rights violations, are they like being useful or not at all? And we decided to go especially to adolescents' sexuality, because we feel like there's a moral issue of talking about the sexuality of adolescents. There's this idea that it's not only punitivism, but it's also protectionism. So it's in a way, it's infantilizing a lot of the teenagers, and then also wanting to control and to want to delay sexuality. So in a way, they're not sexual people, but at the same time they are. So people get really, really uncomfortable, and by people I mean policymakers and the system itself, society. So that was the origin of the campaign, was where can we see a specific example of how criminalization is not working. And I agree with Sabrina in saying, like, I think that it has been very uncomfortable for the feminist movement to come across this idea of challenging how are we doing with criminalization and why are we doing this, because many of the policies that we have and the laws that we have on adolescents are meant to protect them, and have been defended, promoted, designed by feminist movement. And we don't see that the judicial system is very macho, no? It's patriarchal. It's also meant to protect the material things of wealthy people. It's like it has all these faults, that defects, and it's the way that it has been designed. Then when it comes here, we really wanted this as feminists. When I say we, is the royal we of the feminist movement. We really wanted this system to work for us, but in reality, is working against the people that are most marginalized, the people that are more disenfranchised. So that is what we have been seeing in these cases. It's the disenfranchisement of teenagers, furthermore, and putting them even further away from society and from the policies that could actually support them. And I think that I do work, and I would like to work against marriage in general. But one of the things that we have been working as well was this idea of banning teenage marriage, or people under 18 as a total ban. Because what we see in Latin America is that they will not go to the state and get married, but they will go to church and get married. Or they will just live with the person, but they will not get the rights, but they will get away from violent families. They will get away, there are other things that's why teenagers are also changing their homes, and also this is a way that they can get away from the people that are hurting them, the people that are not acknowledging them, and the policies that are also putting them away, giving their power to the mother, giving the power to the grandmother, that are the ones that are violent to them. So it is this conjunction of the punitivism and protectionism that they can see in adolescents. That's why the Injusta Justicia is trying to make people see that there's no straightforward answer on how, when is consent coming into place, when is, we cannot have this completely cut on, by 18 then you have all the rights, or by you have all the tools, or you don't have the tools. And I think that it came from a reflection in general on why, for some things, when we're talking about sexual rights and reproductive rights, why for some things we are saying that it doesn't matter what the law says. This is what we say when we talk about abortion, right? It doesn't, regardless of the law, people that need to have an abortion will have an abortion because they need to have an abortion, So what is it that we are why are we thinking that the punitivism or the punitive laws are gonna make people stay away from those practices that we want to stigmatize? Because that's the idea of a penal code, right? This is our stigma book. These are the things that we frowned upon, and then we're gonna put people in jail so they learn not to do it. But the thing is that we don't have any. It's a theoretical thing that we are following, and we know that people do things regardless of the law, and if it's against the law, it's going to be in the worst conditions. It's going to be with more and more distance from the state, from the protection systems, from social programs, for anything that could actually open their arms and say, like, oh, you want to get married and you're 14, why do you want to get married? Like, let's have a conversation. Why do you want to get married? Maybe we can have then like give you a program, a social program where we can give you protection, we can give you other options. Instead of that, what we're saying is like, no, this is out of the way, ciao. And that's not a solution for people. I have many things to say about that, but it's this idea of one measure that will fit all, and then it's an easy fix. And also in Latin America, we have seen a lot of politicians using this kind of punitive laws as a way to get more votes. So like I will give 100 years of jail for people that rape women. Oh yes, let's vote for him. But the thing is that it is an easy fix. You will say as a politician, you will say, I did this, I did all of this, because actually changing the social norms and changing the way that we think about gender, the way that we think about sexuality is going to take forever. No politician is going to be able to put it on their agenda as like, thanks to me, now we don't have gender-based violence. Nothing is going to work like that. But it's taking away the budget, it's taking away the political will, and is sometimes distracting us as a movement from what we really want to change and transform.
Though I was just wondering if all of you were able to, or some of you were able to write down your questions and would like to pass it to us. Any other questions in the room?
I think it's for Sabrina, no?
Is it?
Could you read that for Sabrina? Thank you.
Sabrina. And just for you to know that we have somebody that's whisper translating to Karina in the middle of the room.
Yes. She also knows Uruguayan.
Exacto. And she only speaks Uruguayan.
I understand that. Yes.
So, Sabrina, en Uruguay nuestras personas de miedo son las activistas trans odiantes, abolicionistas del trabajo sexual. ¿Qué acciones de cuidado adoptan ustedes que puedan ser eficaces? I'm going to say it in English just for the rest of the people. In Uruguay, the people that we are most afraid of are the trans hater activists and the abolitionists of sex work. What kind of care actions do you take that are efficient?
Thank you. Almost self-defense. Do I answer in English or in Spanish?
You can do both if you can.
Creo que varía mucho, creo. Igualmente, también tengo que hacer una autocrítica y bueno, es decir que nos falta también un poco de autocuidado, nos falta un poco de apapacho pues, después de que una volvió de CSW o volvió de Human Rights Council, porque tenemos que pasar a lo siguiente y el timeline y los deadlines y el proyecto que dejamos unas semanas medio colgado porque estábamos participando en otro veto. Entonces, creo que nos hace falta más autocuidado, pero también volvemos a lo mismo, ¿no? Nos hacen falta recursos para que la gente que pueda ofrecer esos cuidados dentro de la comunidad, también tenga, bueno, una remuneración por también estar ahí, por aportar, por brindar sus cuidados, su sabiduría, como se hace cualquier otro trabajo de cuidados, ¿no? Y esperamos otra vez que se haga gratis. Creo que hemos avanzado mucho, pero también es cierto que es la primera o de las primeras veces después de 80 años que gente como yo puede estar en este espacio, gente trans, migrante, trabajadora sexual, todo al mismo tiempo puede estar en este espacio porque o no nos han visado, o bueno, ahora con la administración nueva aún también es terrible, pero bueno, antes también ya era complicado, antes de que hubiera leyes de identidad de género y nuestros papeles no concordaban. Entonces, es importante que sigamos trabajando en el autocuidado, porque si no, al final te quemas, como activista te quemas, ya no quieres venir a ese espacio. Y desafortunadamente, aunque la ONU sea este meme del tanque de agua con el chorro y le ponen una tirita, eso es la ONU. Hay que seguir estando en este espacio porque es de donde surgen todas las decisiones, las leyes que después se van a aplicar e implementar en nuestros países. Do I translate?
Yes, please.
Oh, that was a meaning about the self-care. It's like, first of all, I want to share self-critique as a movement, as a person involved in the sex worker rights movement, because even though we have advanced a lot in the awareness of that the problem, self-care, of that collective care after attending a space like the CSW or the Human Rights Council or any other, like the European Parliament that I have the luck, work or whatever to attend. I say that also with pride because I'm the only trans sex worker openly say that have a badge for the parliament. So what we need to be like more aware on the self-care, but I think we need to work more on that. I think that we have little space to really care about for the people that come to these spaces, and then you come back and have to get again on the project that you left like a little behind because you were a week outside, or the next event, or the next crisis that you have to also attend. So we need resources. Of course, there is again the funding resources to being able to compensate to the people that provides that care, that provide that knowledge of knowing how to care, and definitely it's a work in progress. But I think we're going in the good direction.
Thank you so much, Sabrina, for that. We have one question which I'm actually going to put to the whole panel, and I think you can each reflect on it from your position within the feminist movement or general human rights movement space. So, what are the alternatives to criminalizing rape, and should criminalizing rape be stopped? Would you like, Maria Luisa, would you like to start? Maybe we'll sit with that for because I know that
This solve it all panel.
it's something that obviously we reflect on probably in every one of the movements we've talked about it. We reflect on it in the sex workers' rights movement, in the intersex rights movement, and of course talking about reproductive justice, and of course talking about young people's rights. So, who wants to start?
I can start. Yeah, I'm very brave. Yeah, I'm very brave. No, because I have no answer. I have many questions. I think that is one of the things that we encounter the most is a lot of what do we do with gender-based violence in general? Like And what we have seen, and we have had tons of conversations with research and with Vecinas in different feminist spaces. And I think that one thing is what we theoretically think about punitivism, about that. But when we talk about, yes, okay, but the rapist rape your daughter or your sister, then of course all the rage comes into our bodies and we forget about any theoretical nothing. So I think that it is about having a discussion and reflecting and challenging ourselves over and over again, and thinking that right now the judicial system is not putting in jail all the rapists. They're putting in jail only the poor ones, only the ones that don't have connections, only the ones that are the worst male in the terms of patriarchy, no? So the ones that are like most marginalized males, those and rapists, are those the ones that are in jail, not the real powerful, the ones that make parties and drug everybody, and not those that are profiting from raping women. I think that there's something about dignity that we saw with the case of Giselle, the French woman, that tried to just change the narrative, and so that we can frown upon and make it more something that we reject as society. So I think that it is about to reject it as society, but I don't know if it is about a punishment that is, because who is going to be the judge? And that is the thing, that always the judge is going to be somebody that we don't know if they are the rapists themselves. If we live in a patriarchal society, then the judicial system is going to forever protect those that are, I'm putting the rapist as, as a label, as if it was the worst. I don't think that it's necessarily the worst, just because humanity sucks. We can always do worse. But what we're doing and what we can do is challenging ourselves. We're building a guide that supports us to have these conversations among ourselves and among our communities, so that we can have the conversations. I don't think that we're necessarily going to end up with the best answer, but at least acknowledging that revenge is something that it's within us. Revenge is something that even not only as in us as individuals, I vindicate revenge for communities. I do think that Palestinians need to have some sort of vengeance. This is because you need to feel rage. If you don't feel rage, you're dead. So it's something that stretches and it comes from the very core part of ourselves. And how do we live that, and how do we hold a space for others to feel it and to heal as well?
Just a brief comments. First of all, I'm not in favor of revenge because I come from Argentina, and Madres de Plaza de Mayo and Abuelas de Plaza de Mayo, they have always said, we are not for revenge, we are for justice. And they have been through the most painful situations, huge difficulties, and we have each other. Yes, and we are their children, and we have learned from them. So I cannot advocate for revenge, but for justice. Regarding the question, for me, part of the conversation is, what is the purpose, or what for are we thinking of criminalizing rape? If it has to do with the sense of justice for the victims, that's one thing. And that is a valid conversation. So there are many alternatives. Also, there are different ways in which that criminalization can happen. People can be incarcerated in worse conditions than others, or for some period of time, or for eternity, like in this country where people receive 500 years sentences. But that is one conversation, and I don't want to disrespect people who have been victims of rape. But if the purpose of criminalization is because that will diminish the cases of rape, that will make some men refraining from rape, that is not a valid argument because data shows that doesn't happen. So those are two different conversations, and I think we need to dig into that. What for, with purpose are we talking about criminalization? Two very different situations. So for me, one is valid and the other has been shown to not be effective. You don't dissuade men from being rapists because you have higher sentences.
Thank you. Thank you so much, both. Sabrina, would you like to reflect on that question? And then maybe Esan as well, would you like to reflect on the question about gender-based violence from your movement positionality and how you would respond to this question of criminalizing gender-based violence? Sabrina? Do you think they can hear me? Sabrina, can you hear me?
No.
Okay. Esan, can you hear me?
No.
No?
It's taken.
Something has happened? Let me put it in the chat.
Are they worried? Are they text chatting?
Perhaps maybe the way. Perhaps they have.
Termination.
Could you try again?
Sabrina, can you hear me? Oh, okay. Sabrina, would you like to reflect on this question about violence, gender-based violence, and criminalization from your movement positionality?
Yeah, I lost a little bit the audio with the other answers, but I don't know if I'm gonna repeat. Definitely, we know that criminalization doesn't work. Sometimes, however, we have some pro um, police, pro criminalization inside also our movement. You know, we're not alien to have people that are racist, that are xenophobic, and etc. All the beautiful things that the right wingers have. The sex workers, we're not immune to that, and uh, we have also cases of sex workers that use the police, so you know they can take the foreigner sex workers out, and I mean, so also the money, the economical dimension also impacts, but definitely is what has been said before. The jails are full of poor people. You know, it's just the people that cannot pay a lawyer, a good lawyer. We know that the rich rapists in this case. That is also like the question, like what we do with the rapist without prison. We have to then look for another ways of accountability. We need to start that conversation. I think that just the policy of punishment as a consequence of a bad acting is not usually useful. You know, the idea is to apart that person from the society, but then inside they start to organize, and then it becomes more and more criminal. No, it's like what you leave a cat that is not very friendly. You put it in the bedroom, and you lock him in the bedroom. Let's see the cats after a year. Let's see how that go. So definitely we need to look for another ways, another models of accountability, of compensation, of restorative justice that we are not having. At least I think that the feminisms should be doing that, because in the end, as it was said before, the justice is patriarchal. El Estado violador, el Estado juzgado es un macho violador, or I don't remember the lyrics from the thesis, but the state, we cannot trust in the state. So we need to try to look for alternative ways of making people accountable.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Sabrina. I think we... No worry. We will move to the last question. We had another intervention that is about this question of violence. And the written intervention says a rape conviction keeps the rapist from raping another woman and then another, because rape tends to be a serial crime. But I think I'm also going to maybe just challenge the premise here a little bit. I think when it's quite a common experience for us that when we start talking about challenging criminalization, the conversation about GBV tries to or tends to derail us, right? And so I also want to challenge the premise a little bit that we can't kind of throw rape into the mix as a way to, we shouldn't be derailed by the conversation about rape and sort of, imagine that it's kind of this insurmountable point, right? That's why we're here, to have these difficult conversations. And I think I agree with Oriana that it's also a problematic premise to assume that rape is the worst possible thing that can happen to any of us, right? So I think it's always, I think, just, kind of interesting that we tend to arrive at this point. So I also want to just redirect us a little bit and move us to kind of the last section of our session, which is that we will have our panelists just reflect for maybe a minute or so each, couple of minutes perhaps each, on just going forward, how do we learn from each other in terms of our work on or against criminalization? What can we do for each other's movements? What are some of the blind spots, perhaps, that we should be aware of, to move forward in a way that doesn't undermine each other's agendas and each other's demands? So moving us along to the last section, of, which is hoping to leave us with some thoughts about collaboration and really being better allies to each other. Sabrina, could we start with you on that last reflection?
Yes, what can we, what are the future for the collaboration? First of all, inside the sex workers movement, I think that we are going to have a conversation on terminology, us too, because we keep calling the TERFs and the SWERPs, mostly the SWERPs. We are continue defining them as abolitionists, and definitely we should not give them that title. We know the abolitionist movement, where it comes from, who started with it, and who are taking advantage of extracting that term again, another extraction from Black women, in order to co-opt them again and use it in their convenience, because for them prostitution or sex work is itself slavery. I think I cannot disagree more with that, but that's their view. As if there are no worries they were in many other sectors, or at least is the one that worries them. So for us, having a conversation, recognize the stories of other social movements, and be present, and go to their events, go that they also come to ours to get to know each other. And I think that from there we can finally break the famous silo structure that we always try to break, and now we can't, because the same system is the one that puts us again in boxes and redirects us again. So I think the solidarity is important, that that we can also connect the dots on that our movements are not isolated, that work together. And after they stop going from one collective, or that collective is already finished, then we go to the next. And like the poem says, it's so true. So I think that I want to leave it in a high spirit notes, so we can continue the morning. As you, most of us that in New York, that it's not easy sometimes to navigate. That I think that we as intersectional feminists or marginal feminists, or however we want to denominate us, we have learned that there are situations that we may be not be in 100% agree, like sex work, but definitely that is connected to other to our own movements, so the movements that we are defending, and to the causes that we are defending. Or you can ask the special reporter on violence against women. So when you push for policies that are implemented as a border control, then at some point they bite you on the ass. Thanks.
Maria Luisa, would you like to go next?
Okay. I think one problem has been that our movements have been developing identity politics and single issue politics that is extremely problematic and lead us to these situations. We need to abandon that approach and to have a comprehensive approach that takes into account many different issues, as it was mentioned before, like class and race, for instance, when talking about the incarceration, judicial system, and how do we create new ways of responding to these problems and to these violences. I think we need to be able to sit and hold uncomfortable conversations and to be willing to listen and not to discard other people's confronting views at first sight. For instance, I realized the comment on keeping people in jail came after I said, for how much time will be someone incarcerated? I would like to go on with that conversation. It's not an easy conversation, and I don't have an answer. So I think we need to be willing to listen, be willing to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers, and to acknowledge that some conversations will be really uncomfortable and difficult, but we need to be able to hold them and to embrace conflict and conflict of opinions without turning that into a battle against each other. I think that is really very important at this moment. And we need to be able to try new things and see what happens. Many times when we are having these conversations, people say, well, but then that may happen, and we are living in a system that is not being effective. It's not reducing harm. It's not preventing the violences supposedly it will prevent. So we are seeing something that is not working. So why not try something different? Perhaps it won't work either. Perhaps it will. But to try something different, because this situation is not working. It's perpetuating the damage, it's perpetuating and amplifying violences. So we need to be creative, we need to hold conflict, and we need to be courageous and try new things.
I think that the thing that we have in common, I would say, is like the essentialism of biology, of sexuality, of reproduction. I think that we need to stay away from that. I think that not allowing people to self-determinate, to have their own bodily autonomy and their freedoms is what is like stopping us from the society that we actually want to build. Yes, sorry. I just have this and I just want to talk to it. Sorry. Yes, so now I'm not doing this. So essentialism for me is something that we need to fight against and make sure that we are allowing people to have their own determination of what they are themselves, how they perceive themselves, how they identify, what they decide to do, how they choose to, be in this world. And any form of control over what we do with our bodies is something that we need to stay away from. And I think that it is what the hegemonic immune system is trying to put on us, is what the Trumps and the Millets of the world are trying to do to ourselves. But I also think that, I also think that we need to stop trying to find justice in individualizing issues. And I think that that's what happens with criminalization. We're stopping to see the systematic injustice, and we're trying to put it as this individual is the one that is doing it wrong, but losing sight of what systemically we're doing. And I think that the same that it's happening with that when we criminalize is the same when it happens when we talk about centering on the victim. I think that would also entail this kind of lack of perception of this person needs to heal and needs to have restorative, like a restoration of the damage done. Yes, but it's not only about what this person in particular needs, but it's justice. It's just to broaden the scope of what justice means, so that it doesn't become individualized for either the victim or the perpetrator.
Unfortunately, we seem to have Esan. I think there was a network. I think before I hand over to Sabrina, I think, all of you are just reminding us that what we are agreed on, and there are some things that we're maybe not agreed on, which is fine. What we are, I think, broadly agreed on is that the system that we have right now is not working. Right? At least I think we're arriving at that place to say, and this is, because we take the question of violence very seriously, in case that wasn't already clear, right? It's not to say that we don't. I think everyone in this room takes the question of violence very seriously. And this is why we're having this conversation, because we take the question of violence so seriously, and because we want to maintain a consistent logic in how we think about who deserves violence and what we have signed off on as a society, and who is a good victim and who we want to protect and who we're okay if they're not protected from violence, right? So I think, bringing just the sort of point about that kind of consistency, and I think, Maria Luisa, to your point, we're not always going to get it right. And that's okay. But we know that, we have to have some courage in at least saying, okay, let's try something new, because we know that what we have right now is not working. And I'll hand over to Sabrina to bring this session to a close.
Thank you, everyone, again, for making time to be here for this very important conversation. There are a few people, before we close the session, just wanted to thank a few people who have been part of making today's event possible. Firstly, I would like to thank all of our partners, along with, I'm from Noor, but we had the Just Futures Collaborative, we had APC, as well as Intersex Asia. Thank you, every team member who was involved in all the back-end preparation. Secondly, I would like to thank all of our speakers for making time: Sabrina, Esan, Maria Luisa, Oriana, as well as Sheena, who couldn't make it, and Andrea for recording the video. I would also like to thank Sinara and Liza from the Decoy Pictures, who are doing the recording and the tech support for today. And last but not the least, all of you for waking up very early in the morning and making time to be here on a very cold morning. Although it's my favorite weather, I'd never complain. But on that note, while we move on to rest of our day, I also want to read this poem so that we do not forget what is happening in Gaza right now while we are sitting here. More than 400 people have been killed by the airstrikes. And I just want to close this session by reading a poem by a Palestinian poet whose name is Musab Abu Toha. And the poem is They Bomb Us. If we stay in our houses, they bomb us. If we shelter in a school, they bomb us. If we run in a hospital, run to a hospital, they bomb us. If we move into a tent, they bomb us. If we run from an airstrike, they bomb us. If we do not do any of this, they still bomb us. If we remain standing like a tree, or even temporarily leave like a leaf in the fall, they still bomb us. But spring will come. And those who bomb us, will find no bombs among the flowers. We will be on the trees, bathing in the sun next to sparrows' nests. And those who bomb us, will have no sun, no place to rest, nowhere to run. Thank you.